I'm doing an interview show. How can I record guests when I'm not in the same room with them? Hello, friend. Thanks for pressing play on this episode of the Brassy Broadcast. I'm Jen Eads. I'm a musician, a student of the creative universe, and a curious girl full of questions. I'm also the head broad in charge at the Brassy Broadcasting Company, where I partner with the creators, the doers, and the makers of the world to put them in the ears, heads, and hearts of new audiences with podcasts and other audio goodness. When you're ready and want more in-depth one-to-one coaching on your podcast workflow, audio quality, or help jumping some other podcasting hurdle, click the link in the show notes or go to brassybroad.com/Brass Tacks Podcasting Toolkit. Until December 31st, 2017, it will take you to the Brass Tacks Podcasting Toolkit page, where you can schedule a 1-hour strategy session with me to learn how to get the most out of everything that I've packed into this digital toolkit for the special price of $97. This package contains tools, templates, and tactics to help you build a strong foundation to support your podcast. And I'm here to show you how to put it all together. Now let's explore some ways to record your guests. We are 27 episodes into these brass tacks of podcasting wisdom. I have not yet and will not ever tell you that there is only one right way to do something. I will always encourage you to experiment and think about these 3 considerations, which I believe should be considered for any aspect of your podcast. Number 1, tech. Number 2, budget. Number 3, workflow. Let's start with the tech. How tech savvy are you? How tech savvy are your guests? Is there something they will have to download and install to do this interview? And storage. When using software that records locally, you have to make sure that your guest has room on their device. When using web-based tools, you also need to know if it requires a certain browser, like Firefox or Chrome. And do you have to call your guest on a landline? Yes, people still use landlines. And what kind of device will your guest be using for the call? All of these are considerations for selecting the right call recorder for the job. Much like tools for recording and producing your podcast, the tools for recording guest calls also span the budget spectrum. Better sound quality and ease of use will cost more money. When possible, it's worth the investment. Your sound quality is a direct reflection of your brand. Think about these following considerations. Do you have a monthly budget set aside for call recording? Do you want to buy something once and be done, or do you prefer a smaller monthly payment? Or do you want something free? That's also an option. You will also want to consider how this recording tool fits into your workflow. Do you need to have the ability to split the tracks so that each guest is on a separate track? How many guests do you need to record at once? Where are the files saved? Locally, on your laptop or desktop, or in the cloud so that you have to download them later? Can you do the editing and production directly in the recording app like you can with Cast? Or will you have to import the files into a different app for editing, like GarageBand or Audacity? I'm going to share a list with you of methods and apps for recording guests remotely. This list is by no means a list of everything or every method available. It seems like that list is growing daily. As always, I encourage you to take the time to experiment and determine what is easiest for you and fits best into your workflow and budget. These are just a starting point. Let's start with the double ender. What is a double ender, you ask? A double ender is where each guest records their own audio. Your guest would do their own recording and then send the audio file to you. This is an ideal setup when possible. And your guest doesn't need anything fancy. they can use something like QuickTime to actually record themselves on their end. This is where that tech consideration comes in. Is it easy for your guest to record on their end, or will it be a burden for them? I've used Skype for the majority of my guest interviews. I use Audio Hijack on my desktop to do the recording. I've also used Ecamm Call Recorder, and I was pleased with that. Ecamm makes it easy to split the recording so you are on one track and your guest is on the other. I like Skype because you have the ability to record conversations even when your guest is using a landline. Wi-Fi and internet can be challenging when recording Skype calls. I've had calls drop, and it's incredibly frustrating. When possible, a hardwired internet connection is preferable. If you're not doing a video podcast, save your bandwidth and do audio only. Cast is a web-based tool that allows you to record guests remotely. The cool thing about Cast is that you can also do some editing. In my limited experience with it, the audio quality has been pretty good. Cast also offers post-production presets, and you can drop in audio like an intro or your outro. Cast does not require your guest to download anything, and that's a big plus in my book. Zencastr is another web-based tool, and that is Zencastr. It's similar to Cast in that there is nothing for you or your guest to download. You send your guest a link, and they access the call that way. Zencastr lets you add an intro and outro, but you don't have the option of doing any editing. It also has an automatic post-production feature that's pretty helpful. I love the idea of Zencastr. When it works great. But the audio quality has been hit and miss for some of my clients. Hindenburg is a DAW often used by journalists. Certain versions of Hindenburg allow you to record Skype calls. I use Camtasia to record and edit most of my podcasting tutorials, and you can also record Skype calls in Camtasia. Zoom is another option. Most business professionals are familiar with Zoom for remote meetings. You can record those calls. It's not my favorite from a sound quality standpoint, but it's easy to use, and there's already some familiarity with it. There are both free and paid versions of Zoom. And Ringer is another tool for recording interviews via smartphone. You and your guest have to download the app. It also requires a Chrome or Firefox browser. The sound quality I've heard on Ringer recordings has been pretty good, and it also gives you the flexibility to record multiple guests depending on the plan that you choose. And I'm going to go old school for a minute here. There's always the tape sync. The tape sync can be pricey, but it will give you the best sounding audio quality. A tape sync is when you hire a real live person to go hold the microphone up to your guest while you talk to them on the phone or some other device. Air Media is a resource for finding local audio producers that can go out and do tape syncs. Regardless of the tool you choose to record your interviews, you will create a much better experience for both you and your guest when you communicate expectations and give clear instructions and outline technical requirements, apps that must be downloaded, and the environment they need to be in for the best quality interview possible. Revisit episode 15 in this series for a refresher on creating canned responses and email templates, so you already have this info readily available to send to your guests. If you found even the smallest little nugget of wisdom in this episode, share it with a friend that needs to hear it. Don't bogart the podcasting wisdom. Spread the podcast love. Instagram is my jam. You can connect with me there to get the behind the scenes where my podcasting and musical worlds collide. And for my podcasting tutorials, subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can even listen to the podcast there. You can find me on YouTube at Jen Eads Brassy. And Eads is spelled E-D-D-S. Thanks for listening. Now get out in the world and do some good.